So I've been asked to speak a little bit about what is called in Buddhist teaching the 8 worldly conditions. One thing we can say about Buddha Dhamma, the teaching of the Buddha and the manifestation of that teaching in our own hearts and in the world, is that it is most certainly relevant to our lives now. We speak about greed and hatred and delusion, and these things are not different now in the 21st century as they were 2,600 years ago in the country that we now call India. So Dharma is relevant in every aspect of our life. And the whole of the Dharma practice we can explain very simply as cease to do evil, learn to do good, and purify your own mind. Cease to do evil. Evil is not really a word in Buddhist Dhamma. This is from more a Christian background. But to stop doing unwholesome things. Because the beings that receive the consequence of these unwholesome actions is ourselves, always. Whatever we put out comes back to us. We can't avoid that. Karma is such a deep and significant and important teaching. Perhaps, as my teacher said, it's a lifetime study. It's so subtle. It's most certainly not how you see it presented on social media. For sure, we can say that. It's part of the right understanding, the samadhi of the Eightfold Path. So we learn to recognize that doing unwholesome things, empowering anger and hatred and greed is not useful for us at all. It may seem relevant in the moment, but outside that moment, it has no value. And so we learn to let go of that. So cease to do these unwholesome actions. Learn to do good. To bring yourself into this place where we recognize the potential that we all have. To be of service to others, to animals, to insects, to fish, birds, and of course our fellow human beings. This is the way of Dharma. The absolute foundation of Dharma is awareness and love. And this is love with this sort of capital L. It's not about an attachment to something. Whatever you're attached to is going to hurt you sooner or later. And this is just a reflection we can all make. Anytime you are struggling with your life and anytime you are meeting some difficulties, you can, if you're able, you can take yourself to a quiet place and just take a moment and ask yourself, well, in this moment, what am I attached to? And it's always the same. The response of the understanding, the Dhamma understanding is always the same. In this moment, what am I attached to? I'm attached to the idea that this moment should be different than the way it is. And of course, that's pointless because it isn't different. It is like this. And that's what we have to open-heartedly accept the reality of this moment, to embrace it, to harmonize with it, and then respond. Never ever to be a victim, this idea of being a doormat for someone or something else, that they can take advantage of you and exploit you and manipulate you. So never to be in that place, ever. So cease to do evil or cease to do unwholesome things. Learn to do good, wholesome actions and purify the mind. So the purifying of the mind is the meditation practice we use. In modern terms, we call it vipassana. Traditionally, it was called satipatthana. And it is the reflection of mind and matter. What are we as human beings? We are this never-ending stream of thoughts, moods, feelings, and emotions, conditioning the arising of subatomic particles of matter that we call the body. And that's what I am, that's what you are, that's what all living beings are. This energy field conditioned by aspects of mind, these different moments of mind arising and passing away. The more love there is in your heart, for sure, the lighter your body feels, the happier your life appears to be. Or you're not struggling with everything. The more fear-based conditions you carry with you, then the heavier your body is. It becomes a load to carry. And then with the mind creation of stories, well, it shouldn't be like this, and when I was a little boy or when I was a little girl, and this happened and that happened, we drag it with us into every situation. Well, it's not useful, is it? Because then we're not seeing the situation. We're just following an old story. So we can say that this is the teaching of the Buddha, or a teaching of all the Buddhas actually, It's a teaching of Dhamma. And the reason it is like this is because it's the best for you. Somebody, when I was teaching in Israel one time, somebody asked me, they were having difficulty with a co-worker in an office. And she said, well, if she doesn't respect me, why should I respect her? And of course, that's not an unreasonable question. It's not an unreasonable understanding of a situation when you are unaware of Dhamma, for example. So if she doesn't respect me, why should I respect her? And the answer is very simple. Because it's better for you to live in a way where the behavior of others does not influence your behavior. That when you have the opportunity to be kind, to be loving, to be generous, no matter what the external conditions appear to be, it is to take that spontaneously, to share this enormous potential we have with all beings. But that's the Dharma life. There is another life, the worldly life, and we know it because we live in it. So even the Buddha spoke about this difference between these two lives. And he spoke about the 8 worldly conditions. And once we are involved in any of those 8 worldly conditions, then we lose our balance and we become victims in our own life. We become subject to the suffering or the unhappiness or the frustration or the disappointment that we want to evade so much. What we want is to feel good all the time. That's what everybody wants. But of course it's not possible. Not all the time. These pleasant feelings arise and pass away like everything else. But if we're connected to the world, then we're pursuing something, an embellishment of self, a development of self, to be someone, to be seen as someone, to be known as someone. But these are dangerous areas to put ourselves in. The awakened being, the fully awakened being, is quite invisible because there's nothing for them to show. There is a Japanese koan which says, why does the awakened being not stand up and proclaim themselves? What would you say? How would you express your awakening? Only in the sense of how we live in the world. The Chinese then say, there is no awakened being, only awakened action. This idea of self falls away. There's no one promoting themselves or even promoting religion or philosophy, anything that can lead to division. Dharma is all-inclusive, absolutely all-inclusive. It's about love. Love is all-inclusive. It's about awareness of whatever's arising. So it's all-inclusive. So the Buddha said, well, this is the Dharma path, but the worldly path, this is where you have to take care. And there are 8 conditions that come in pairs. The first 2 are praise and blame. So, of course, what we want is to be praised. We want people to acknowledge us, to celebrate who we are, to see us as being someone worthy of respect and someone worthy of gifts and someone worthy of the acknowledgement of others. And that's a dangerous place to put yourself because the opposite often happens. Because you put yourself in the position of praise and blame, and then what you really meet is blame. You find yourself being blamed for things that you're responsible for or you're not responsible for, but either way, it leads to turmoil in the mind. So we have this attitude of praise and blame. Well, I want to be known for being somebody wonderful, but I don't want anything to be blamed on me or something to be my fault. So I let those go. I don't seek a place in the world. I don't seek to be special in any way. I just live my life quietly. In that way, I keep myself out of trouble whilst remaining on a pure Dhamma path. This is so important, this idea of not becoming some acknowledged spiritual teacher with hundreds of thousands of disciples or students who don't actually practice. There is the story of the Emperor of Japan who heard that there was a master of Dhamma who had a monastery with many, many, many monks training there. And he the emperor wanted to visit this master, and so of course he did. He's the emperor, he can do what he wants. And so he visited the master and he saw all these monks, maybe 1,000 monks. And the emperor looked at the master and he said, you have so many monks here. How many disciples do you have? And the master looked around and he said, maybe 3. That's what it's like. Dharma and Dharma practitioners are rare. Even to step outside the religion of Buddhism and Zen, or Tibetan Buddhism, any of the Mahayana schools, or the Theravada school itself. But just to be quiet, to live with love, to be aware, to cease to do evil, to learn to do good, to purify your own mind. And not to get involved in the world of praise and blame. Oh, you are a wonderful teacher, you're a wonderful musician, you're a wonderful this, da da da. Or the opposite. Well, you're not very good, and because of you, something happened, etc., etc. So the first couplet is praise and blame. The second one is similar, of course. Fame and defame. It seems now with the rise of social media and talent shows on television, people want to be famous. But as one well-known and famous French actor said, when he was asked by a fan, I suppose, how can I be famous? This actor replied, fame is not a career. It's not. Learn to do what you're supposed to do. And then fame or being well known will follow by itself. But to pursue fame, to be known, to have, I suppose, the things that come with fame, the idea that you want a table in a restaurant and you can just mention your name and they'll throw other people out so you can have a table. This is not something to pursue at all. From the Dhamma path, it's not something to pursue. The Buddha became famous in his own life, not because he wanted to be famous, but because he brought something that touched the hearts of people. So fame and then defame, to be acknowledged as someone who is not worthy, who is not good. And we see this very often, and certainly very often in spiritual circles. In my own life, I've seen many teachers fall from grace because behind the scenes, they were not what they presented themselves to be. They were not as pure as they would like their disciples to think, and they got caught out and so. But we hear this many times. And with personalities on television, we had the whole Me Too movement based on, what was revealed by people who were famous, but then who fell into defame and lost their careers and whatever else. So again, when we have integrity, then we just do what we're supposed to do. If you want to be a disciple, a Dhamma disciple, then your work is on yourself. And it is looking at these different moments and aspects of self-identity as it arises, the I thought, I want, I need, I must have, I, me, mine, and my. And whenever they are present in the mind, for a moment, you are opening the doors to your suffering, because it's I who wants to be famous, I who seeks praise and not blame. It is I who can win and lose, which brings me to the next one, which is gain and loss. That we gain things, we gain perhaps popularity. But when we have these things, they're so easy to lose, as I've just spoken about. We have things that if you lose something in the material world, it doesn't really mean very much, because we can replace things. So this is not, I think, a big issue. It might be something precious, but nevertheless, we can survive without. Certainly, we can survive without them. But if we lose our integrity, this is hard to come back from. Where we show us, and in fact, this is the Dharma truth, that everyone, sooner or later, shows themselves. You reveal yourself. You reveal your greed or your hatred or your delusion. You can't hide it forever. And so when we have this idea of gain and loss, we want, if it's in the spiritual area, we want more disciples because they bring more money. This is not the Dharma way, not at all. We want our good reputation to be known throughout the world, whilst at the same time perhaps behaving in a poor way. So that's something that we can lose. So then we live in kind of a secret fear. What if people find out about the way I really am? That I'm not this wonderful pure Dharma teacher, but I'm someone just trying to make money or exploiting my students and disciples. So we have gain and loss, and then we have, the final two are pleasure and pain. Pleasure is pleasurable. That's what it's like. So to have pleasure in your life is very nice. To be comfortable with your body and to be comfortable with the mind and to be comfortable in your surroundings. This is really something to welcome in your life. And if you have it, to celebrate it. If you have a nice comfortable chair, no need to look at it because you think, well, I'm a disciple of Dhamma, so I should not sit in a comfortable chair. Yes, of course. Of course you can. Just don't be attached. Whatever you're attached to will hurt you, sooner or later. So pleasure comes, but the opposite of pleasure then is pain. That we have painful experiences with the body, we have painful emotional experiences. We have a painful way to, often just to see the nature of life. So this is something, again, all these things are just something to reflect upon. When we choose one over the other, then we're going to meet the other. We're just trying to avoid it. We're just trying not to meet the opposite of what we want. So these are the 8 worldly conditions. They are praise and blame, fame and defame, gain and loss, and pleasure and pain. Once we have transcended, it doesn't mean something special. It means once we have let go of our attachment or our identification with these things as having value in our life, then we can say, a complete human being. We are just this being now. That we make our own way in the world. We don't mind what others are doing. The responsibility for our behavior lies with us, not with someone else. And it's the same thing for them. Their responsibility for their behavior lies completely with them. This idea that I'm doing this because you made me is a nonsense. It doesn't work. We are always responsible for the mindsets that we empower, for the thoughts that we empower, whether they are for good or for not so good. We did it. And there's no excuse from that. The idea that you're making me do it, or I'm angry because you made me angry. It's how we speak in relationships, but it's not true. The anger you experience comes from you. It doesn't come from somebody else. No one can give you anger. It just feels like that, but no one can give you anger. In the same way, no one can give you happiness. It would be nice, certainly as a parent sometimes, or in my position as a master in front of disciples, that if I could bring happiness to you, if I could just touch you and take away all your difficulties, even for a moment, well, I would do it. But of course I can't. I can just speak like this and remind you the potential that you carry is enormous. And you only have to reflect upon not Buddhist things, but Dhamma things. Things that actually exist, which are as relevant in our 21st century life as they were for the life of the Buddha himself. Desire, for example. Desires arise and pass away. The desire of beings living in India 2,600 years ago may have been different materially, but the movement was the same. Perhaps people in India wanted an elephant, whereas in 21st century Europe, we want a sports car or something like that. But the movement is the same. Aversion. The way to push something out of our life so it doesn't trouble us anymore. Well, that's not different now as it was 2,600 years ago. Of course not. These are the hindrances, the panchanibara. The restlessness we feel, the mental turbulence of thoughts, moods, feelings, and emotions crashing into each other, keeping us awake at night or determining the quality of our meditation. And then that energy manifesting in our body where we can't sit still because we're in the meditation, we're fidgeting and scratching ourselves and waiting for the bell to ring. And it's very common. And sleepiness. That we have no no energy in our life. That we want to stay in bed longer when we come to retreats. Our retreats now are easier than they were when I was training, but you know, we start at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's not everybody wants to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but we do. And then you come to the Dharma hall and you take a good posture and suddenly you're asleep because there's no energy. So we have to cultivate the energy to do this work, not to sleep because we feel tired or sleepy, and not to sleep because we're trying to avoid something, but to sit with determination. I'm here for this. I'm not making excuses about my life anymore. I am responsible for my comportment, for my behavior, and ultimately for my progress. There's nothing stopping any of us from full awakening. Nothing. And the last one is doubt, that we sometimes become overwhelmed by doubt. Oh, I'm not good enough. The teacher's not the right one for me. The posture is not good enough. Many different things. We can fill our mind with doubt until we get to the place where we have to stand up and walk out and lose or leave behind our practice. But doubts come and go. Doubts are natural of the human mind. And we just have to be aware of them, but continue to do our practice, to live with love and to be aware. And the idea that, well, I'm not getting anywhere, or I wanted more than this. This is the voice of self, the ego mind, the one connected to the 8 worldly conditions. I want praise, but I don't want blame. I want fame, but not defame. I want pleasure, but not pain. I want to gain everything. I don't want to lose anything. The obstacle to your happiness is not any of these things, actually. The obstacle to your happiness is you. It is this being that makes all these demands on life, when actually you're fine. You're completely and beautifully fine. You only have to apply yourself to really lovingly letting go of the unwholesome qualities. Cease to do evil. Cease to live in an unwholesome way. Just stop. Just stop harming things. Stop swatting the flies or the mosquito. Stop saying unkind or cruel things to other people. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. The opposite. To take care of these people. Take care of yourself. To take care of the animals around you. The insects and the fish and everything else. As I say, Dharma is completely all-inclusive. So we take care of these things. And purify your own mind. Forget about awakening. Forget about enlightenment. This isn't the point. But just to let go. And this letting go is the purification. In Buddhist teaching is called the Visuddhimagga. The path of purification, to let go and let go and let go. Until all that's left is this smile on the lips. As you experience and manifest the freedom away from the conditions of your own suffering. So then I offer this talk for your consideration and your reflection. And may you all be well and happy. And I thank you.